In this video, we'll be running through whether you should be using Shopify Markets or separating out stores for each new geo that you launch into. I'll give you the pros and cons of both, and then 10 questions that you need to ask yourself to be able to identify which route is best for you. When it comes to Shopify Markets, there's two real pros. Number one is centralized management, meaning that you can operate all of the different markets from just the one Shopify store. So it really simplifies down your operations. And number two is it's cost effective. You don't need to be paying for multiple Shopify subscriptions. You don't need to be paying for multiple Shopify apps across all of those subscriptions. And you also, in most cases, don't need to be paying multiple retainers across multiple website retainers for agencies or multiple SEO retainers as well, which will always be the case if you have separate Shopify stores. The cons of Shopify Markets is you have limited customization. And so if you want to really tailor a website to a specific geo, you can't do that just by using Shopify Markets. All Shopify Markets is going to do is just change your pricing and localize basic information. It can't change the entire storefront. And number two is uniform discounting and promotions. And so any discounts or promotions that you apply will apply universally across all the regions. So you can't limit it to specific markets. I also put two extra points in here that aren't really that important, but I threw them in, which is you'll have a dependency on Shopify payments. If you're using Shopify Markets, in most instances, you can't use other payment processors outside of Shopify payments if you're serving through markets. And then the last one is app compatibility. Not all third-party apps are fully compatible with Shopify Markets, which might potentially limit your functionality. And so you just want to look into what Shopify apps you're using and whether they're compatible if you move into markets. What if you have separate Shopify stores? There's a lot more pros, which is number one, you can have deep localization, meaning that you can customize each store entirely, including unique designs, content, product offerings, and market strategies tailored to those specific markets. You have independent operations, which means that you can manage inventory, pricing, promotions all separately, which gives you a lot more flexibility to address any regional demand or regulations that might be in those particular geos. Number three, I'm not an SEO expert, but I've heard from SEO experts that it's better for SEO. You can operate on country-specific domains, which potentially improves local search engine rankings. And then number four is dedicated payment gateways. Exactly what I alluded to in the last slide, which is that if you do have separate Shopify stores, you can use region-specific payment gateways, which in sometimes apparently is better for compliance and local financial regulation, if that applies to you. The cons of having separate Shopify stores, there are equally as many. Number one, it increases your operational complexity enormously because you now have to manage multiple stores. And so if you're selling in 5 or 6 geos, which some of our clients are, it's a massive job upkeeping all 6 of those stores. It's almost honestly a full-time job. Someone could be just keeping those stores up and running for 10, 20 hours a week. Number two is it's way higher costs. As I mentioned earlier, you're not only incurring more Shopify subscriptions for every single store, but all of the apps double. And so all of your current app costs go and double it or triple it or quadruple it, depending on how many regions you want. And then also your agency costs will scale accordingly as well. Now, in some instances, all of this is worth it for all of the pros, but it's an important consideration. There's also data fragmentation, which means that your customers and sales data will all be siloed into their own separate Shopify stores, which can complicate comprehensive analysis and reporting because you'll have to pull from multiple different APIs to pull all that data together. Not a massive deal, but it's a consideration worth keeping in mind based on how you're currently pulling data and reporting within analytics. And then lastly is it's way more resource intensive, which you've probably got the sentiment of from all of these other points. It's going to require way more time and way more effort to maintain just the operations across all of these different stores. And so there's 10 questions that you want to be asking yourself. On these next few slides, I've broken these questions out so it looks like a lot, but on the very last slide, I'll simplify it all down and I'll also put it in the description so you can just scroll down and read them to yourself and answer them to get a better idea of what you should be doing. Number one is what's the size of your business and the resource capacity? Do you have a team and infrastructure to manage multiple stores, or would a centralized system like Shopify Markets makes more sense for your current scale? Number two, how important is localization for your target demographic? Do you need to have deep customization on a website by website basis? For 80% of people, the answer there is no. But for 20% of stores, the answer is yes. If you have very specific products that change based on, for example, the season in the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere, and you want that localization across all the imagery on the website, you will need separate stores. Number three is what level of operational complexity can you handle? Is your team big enough? If you're handling all of this, can you handle it? It will mean all of the marketing efforts have to be different in terms of there will have to be different ad accounts, generally speaking. They will all have to direct to different websites. There will be more merchant center accounts. There will be considerably more apps that will have to be diagnosed on an ongoing basis. There's a lot of extra workload that gets added. Number four is what's your budget for expansion? It's going to add a lot in operating expenses by adding another Shopify store and all of those SaaS costs duplicating. And so do you have the budget and is it financially feasible to do that right now? Number five, what are the long-term goals? Are you looking to test new markets quickly, which would lean itself towards just going into markets? Or are you looking to invest in a really long-term localized presence? Are you putting a pop-up or even a store in the US? And this isn't something that you're just testing with a bit of budget and then might pull out of, but this is something that you really want to commit to over the long term. Number six is how important is SEO for your business right now? And do you want to translate those SEO rankings and the SEO performance into the other geos that you're going to launch into? Do you need region-specific payment gateways? The answer there is most often no. What tools and apps do you rely on? And are the apps compatible with Shopify Markets? Because if you are going to use Shopify Markets, which is the cheaper alternative, you need to know, well, will the apps even cross-translate if there's any critical ones that you rely on? How important is unified customer data? For most people, it's not a huge deal. You just have to reconfigure all your reporting and analytics. But for other businesses, for probably 5% of businesses, it is an important consideration. And then lastly, how fast do you need to move into new markets? If you want to move quick, if you want to launch into another geo tomorrow, Shopify Markets is obviously the play. If you don't want to and you're willing to take more time and really set this thing up, you would want to have multiple different Shopify stores. And so that's the summarized questions that you should be asking yourself. Feel free to take a screenshot or I'll put it in the description below so you can scroll down, copy and paste this, answer them yourself. And that should provide you with the answer of which direction you should go in.